What's happening, fellas? It's your boy, the Felicia Spencer of Slowly Getting Denser, Jack Slack, Fights Gone By podcast, episode 150, halfway to the 1,000, and we're coming at you after UFC 239, Jones versus Santos, and some other interesting fights. Don't know why I didn't do yesterday. Yesterday I just woke up in an awful funk, and it didn't clear all day, so I just sat quietly, not doing much except finishing that Cyril Gahn piece and putting it up for the Patreon boys. Not sure why, it was a really good card, I just really wasn't feeling anything yesterday. It was very hard to get anything going. But I'm here now, I'm happy, I'm ready to talk about the fights. Albeit a little too late, but we'll pop more Jorge Masvidal's knee in the thumbnail, and we'll be like, was this fair or something? And idiots will click it. But yeah, I thought it was a good night of fights. We'll do a little bit of news first, and then we'll go into the fight details. There's not an awful lot going on this week, there's a couple of fight announcements. Alexa Grasso versus Carla Esparza for UFC Mexico City. Alexa Grasso, obviously Mexican. Isn't Carla Esparza of Mexican descent? I cannot remember. But it would be weird to put two Mexicans against each other on the same card. But then at least you guarantee one a win that way. Yeah, interesting enough. I mean, with how Alexa Grasso's striking looked against Carolina, the heavy bag Kowalkiewicz, that's quite interesting, because Carla Esparza's striking has always been hot garbage, and she comes from that team that refused to check low kicks. What else is going on? Beneil Dariush is out of his fight with Draco Close, which is a really good fight, but unfortunately, shit happens, so now they need to find Draco Close a new opponent. Kyoji Horiguchi's got a fight against Kai Asakura in Rising. Not a tremendously heralded opponent compared to, like, you know, Darian Caldwell, Ben Wynn, and people like that. But I've always liked Kai Asakura. He's a fun fighter. If you've watched any of the Rising cards, he's normally, mid-carding, but putting on entertaining fights. And, as we learned, well, not learned, but as we had hammered home again this weekend, the more unlikely someone looks to be capable of beating the long-reigning champion, the more often they surprise you. Oh, and then the UFC 240 card was finalised, and it is hot diggity dog shit. Let me read you down this list of all killer and no filler. Max Holloway versus Frankie Edgar. Good fight. Frankie Edgar probably doesn't deserve it, but over his whole career, he probably deserved it. And of course, it was going to happen, and then he fought Ortega and lost to stay busy while Max was out injured. So yeah, no problems with them doing that, because it is a good fight. But then your co-main event is Cris Cyborg versus Felicia Spencer, not for the featherweight title. They're not having Amanda Nunes vacate it yet. Just a fight. Then you got Jeff Neal versus Nico Price, Olivia Oben-Mercier versus Arman Sarukian, and then Marc-Andre Barriault versus Christoph Jutko. Firstly, Christoph Jutko's still around, but what the fuck is that for a main card? That's the laziest cash grab I've ever seen. They're just relying on idiots buying that. Especially if you're in the UK and BT Sports is now charging you twice to get pay-per-views. So let's talk about this event that went on. UFC 239. And some people are calling it the card of the year so far. Can't remember the other cards of the year, to be honest. But it was pretty good. I did skip half of Julia Avila versus Panini Clanzad, because, it was women and they seemed to be going to decision, so that was that. Then you had Ismail Nordiev versus Chance Raconteur. Now, Ismail Nordiev, if you saw him last time, he looked absolutely gigantic because he was fighting Michel Prazeres. Michel Prazeres is a fire hydrant. He's just short and stocky. And Nordiev looked enormous. And then he fought Chance Raconteur, and Chance looked even bigger than him. It was pretty incredible. And I thought that Nordiev looked good on the feet, landed some good body kicks, looked tricky to take down for like the first half minute. But then when he hit the mat, he just couldn't do anything. He was holding onto his half guard or whatever, but he wasn't making anything happen, wasn't making any movement, wasn't advancing his position or trying to bait the other guy into doing anything. Just got stuck underneath Raconteur. And that was pretty much the whole fight. Just each round was more of that, with the occasional nice body kick from Nordiev when they were on the feet. A little bit sad because I was excited for the future of Nordiev, but now I'm excited for the future of Chance Raconteur. Then you had Edmund Shabazian versus Jack Marshman. I don't know if I've ever seen an interesting Jack Marshman fight, but he has been finished, interestingly at least. Thiago Santos finished him. He had that awful fight, the Battle of Wales, with whoever it was, Jack. John Phillips, sorry. Got choked by Shoeface. Yeah, just not incredible record at all. And he came out looking like he'd lathered on a load of fake tan on top of his tribal tattoos. Just not a great look. But very quickly gets stopped by a rear naked choke. Then we're into shit that actually interested me. Song Yadong. Madong, your dong, everybody's dong. Against Alejandro Perez. Mr. Pout. I forgot that Alejandro Perez is like always doing blue steel face. But really fun fight, fun finish. I mean, it only lasted like 2 minutes, but Yadong, I'm getting big old whiffs of what's it called, Chui Zhanliang. What is he? Is it featherweight or bantamweight? Can't remember what he is, but he's an incredible kickboxer, ranked like number 1 or 2 in the world. Chinese lad, lots of wheel kicks, but lots of weird shifts too. And that's what I was getting off Yadong. He was doing these like he'd shoulder feint with his left, and then he'd step through into a southpaw stance, ready to throw the left hand. Some interesting little shifts in there from Song Yadong. And then the finish came when Alejandro Perez... I mean, the finish came out of nowhere, which was fantastic, but Alejandro Perez steps up, inside low kick, and then is out cold. And then they show the replay, and as the inside low kick is coming up, Yadong's throwing the hand, it connects, and then just as it's coming back, Yadong's hand cracks him across the chin. Not like a pretty punch by any means, it was like a straight-armed swing across, but he chin-checked him well, and just absolutely sparked him. But Alejandro Perez was ranked very well at bantamweight. I think he was 15th in the UFC or something like that. Yadong was unranked previously, but that's a huge name on your record for Yadong. Just looking at some other websites, Ranking MMA has moved Yadong up to 21st worldwide, which isn't bad, just underneath Juan Archuleta, who's Bellator's next contender for Kyoji's belt. But they're including like Bibiano Fernandez. In terms of UFC rankings, well, I'll stay on rankingmma.com because I quite like it, but you got Yadong, they slotted him in at number 14 above Perez at number 15. In the same sort of area as him, I mean, you did have Brian Caraway, which would have been an interesting matchup, certainly to test Yadong's wrestling, because he's been working on it hard with Team Alpha Male, but he's since been cut because he was on a streak of 2 losses. But you got guys like, well, Ricky Simon's in that fight with Uriah Faber. Cody Stamen would be an interesting matchup, because he's just pure wrestler with decent striking, whereas Yadong's good knockout artist with decent wrestling. But then you're getting up into names like, Rob Font, John Dodson. These are guys that you're considering like, a level above what we've seen Yadong do. And that top 10 is just a murderer's row. You got, Rafael Sunsao, Jimmy Rivera, Corey Sandhagen's broken in there. Petr Yan, Aljamain Sterling, Marlon Moraes, and then of course Henry Cejudo, who would probably chin him right now. But it's interesting because I can see like a big step up coming for Yadong between Alejandro Perez's, Douglas Andrade, Marlon Vera types who are down like the bottom end of the top 20, and these guys up here who are just monsters. So I think Cody Stamen would be a good bet, or maybe Rob Font's just got a fight booked, but Rob Font could be fun. Then you had Claudio Gedaliah versus Randa Marcus. And Randa Marcus came out looking like she was ready to box, and then the two stared at each other for 15 minutes. And it was exactly like we were talking about last week. If your plan is to make someone gas out and you don't do anything, they're not going to gas out. So Claudia Gedaliah gets the win. People go, maybe she's improved her conditioning. And you're like, what did she do? Not going to do like hypothetical matchups for them because who gives a fuck? But then Chito Vera was up. Your boy in the ankle sleeves wore his ankle sleeves, which we always appreciate. But they were a weird like grey colour that wasn't coming through on the TV very well. But yeah, he was fighting this UFC debutante named Nohaline Hernandez. And a weird little fight back and forth. Enjoyed it quite a bit. Grabbed a single or caught a kick, can't remember what it was. But then he used his knee to lift it up higher. Toppled Hernandez over. Hernandez goes to all fours. And Vera immediately jumps on him and takes the seatbelt over and under back harness position and shoots in the near hook at the same time. It was like a spider jumping, one of those bird spiders jumping on a bird. Very cool. Got the back control, moved to a body triangle with his legs. Hernandez didn't seem to know what to do about that. You really got to get onto the side that the legs are locked so that you're taking pressure off the body triangle. And it just makes it harder for them to do anything because if you're sitting on their legs, they can't then change their legs and start moving around and changing the back control. That's the thing about the body triangle. You kind of locked yourself into the one form of control, which is why guys like the Death Squad and Header Gracie and people like that are always on about posted rear mount or whatever. Instead of having the full body triangle, you have one foot on the hip and the other leg all the way across, and you just float from there looking to trap the top arm, as opposed to locking the legs in, because then if they tilt to the other side, you can't really change up your offense that much. But Vera immediately switches to an armbar eventually, but allows Hernandez to roll up on top of him, and then switches off to a bicep slicer, which was very cool. Nasty submission. Banned at, I think it's banned till brown belt, isn't it, in the IBJJF? And you go, really, why? And then actually there have been some pretty nasty bicep slicer injuries. But Hernandez pops out, and Vera is like trying to trap a triangle over. You're looking at Hernandez going, God, please stop staying on the ground with him. You don't seem to know what you're doing that well, or at least as well as Vera does. And Vera's holding a cross grip with his fingers in the top of Hernandez's glove, exactly as you would with a gi sleeve, and the ref's doing nothing about it. But Hernandez actually passes the guard and starts threatening a DAS, but Vera wasn't in trouble at any point as the round expires. Then in the second round, Hernandez takes him down, which is a very weird decision, does some okay work from the top, has him flattened out in butterfly guard with like double underhooks, and doesn't really advance at all. So Vera manages to like sit up, push him back, get into like a more traditional guard. Hernandez stands up and starts kicking his calf, and then Vera just does a technical stand up and charges at him. And then knees him as he ducks in for another takedown attempt. At the moment he kneed him, you could just see all the air go at Hernandez. He just sort of like gives up his back. Hooks aren't even in properly, and he just taps out almost immediately. Kind of like, kind of like exactly what it was. It was a savvy vet versus a guy who was new here. So that puts Marlon Vera. So notch another one in the win column for Chito Vera, who's coming off that knockout win of Frankie Sains. Obviously would have been a little bit better if he'd fought Sean O'Malley and done that, but, you can't do anything about Sean O'Malley's drugs. In terms of future fights for Vera, interesting grappler, fun striker. If you're really pushing it, I'd love to see him against, like, Jimmy Rivera, who kind of needs a bounce-back win now because he's on a two-fight losing streak to Aljamain Sterling and Petr Yan. I mean, that's a solid top 10 guy, and Chito Vera's, like, 15, 16, 17 area. Looking here at Ranking MMA, they've got guys like Dion Drage, Nathaniel Wood and Eddie Wineland above him. I kind of feel like, even though Eddie Wineland got that knockout win in his last one, I kind of feel like Vera should be ranked above Wineland. In fact, in a lot of rankings he probably is, but I think it'd be a waste of Vera's time fighting someone like Wineland at this point. Alexandre Perez is on a 2-fight losing streak, so not really one that makes sense for Vera on his 4-fight winning streak. Thomas Almeida is also on a 2-fight losing streak. Weird position a lot of these guys are in bantamweight division. They've either got like 3 wins back-to-back or several losses. I mean, Cody Garbrandt's ranked at like number 5, and he's got 3 losses in a row at this point. It could probably, to be honest, it could work out that Vera ends up fighting Yadong just because they like to schedule these things when guys. A lot of it is who's free, and both these guys just won their fights and are in a similar position in the division, and are both free. Actually, on the subject of bantamweight movers and shakers, we didn't even talk about John Linacre, who is now he's gone to 1FC. He was a free agent last week, we were talking about that, and then he's gone to 1FC now. So if they like him, he never has to weigh in again. That's how one have fixed weight cutting. But if they don't, they could just say he came in overweight and he wouldn't have any proof that he did or didn't, because who the fuck weighs him in? Very interesting. But he's probably not fighting Demetrius Johnson anytime soon. He's probably... Well, he's sort of making a full-time bantamweight career now, isn't he? But for a while it was like, can't wait to see Hands of Stone fight Demetrius Johnson, if he could ever make weight. Then he had Arnold Allen versus Gilbert Melendez. I mean, I think I was pretty clear on my pessimistic stance on this fight before it happened, but Gilbert Melendez has been washed for a very long time. Wasn't, as good as he wasn't that great to begin with. People remember him as much better because they loved Strikeforce. And, he was having, like, life and death decision with Josh Thompson. Mind you, then so did Benson Henderson, so fair enough. Scraping by Diego Sanchez told you that he was pretty washed. The Jeremy Stevens fight didn't get anything going at all. And Arnold Allen basically did the same thing as Jeremy Stevens, but 2 years later, just battered him. Lovely lead leg low kicks from Allen. Lead leg low kicks, that is. Beautiful long left uppercut to the body. I mean, kind of leaving yourself a little bit open, but, Melendez, his best punch is his right hand, and he still couldn't find him, so fair play to Allen. And he was often coming off that long left uppercut to the body with like a right jab to the head and then a left straight. Even took Melendez down at one point, so, you can't just be like, well, Melendez is slowed down because he beat him everywhere. If he wanted to take him down, he took him down. And Melendez was what Melendez always is. It's throw the occasional jabs out of that very long stance, constantly presenting the lead leg to be kicked, and then throw right hands, finish every combination with a right hand. He is a very basic striker. I mean, he used to be very quick, but he's not so much anymore. I mean, he still caught him with a couple of right hands in the first round, which was quite cool. But nobody wants to see Gilbert Melendez anymore. He is on a 5-fight losing streak in MMA, and he's lost 6 of his last 7. So, don't really need to see him anymore. A single win in the UFC as well. But there's something about him. Just people, I think it's that, Bay Area or whatever, they just fucking love him. Because Scott Coker built like a whole promotion around him, and then Glory were like, oh, please, we'll have Gilbert Melendez's wife. She's a superstar. And as an outsider, you're going, why are these people going mad for Gilbert Melendez's not that great wife? As in, not that great as a fighter. I'm not judging his wife as a wife. But very peculiar. So next for Gilbert Melendez is a pair of comfy slippers and a nice chair by the fireside. Oh, and doubly stupid, he came back to do this at featherweight after fighting his entire career at lightweight. So very much in the BJ Penn area for Gilbert Melendez now. But Arnold Allen, I mean, what's ranking MMA got him as? 18 in the UFC. But then if you look above him, it's guys like Michael Johnson, who, as much as he is on a 2-1 streak, he didn't look good against Fili or Artem Lobov, and then he got smoked by Emmett. So, yeah, I mean, that could be a convincing fight for Allen. And also, I'd give Johnson a decent chance in that still, more than I would against, I don't know, someone like Shane Burgos. Cub Swanson is on a 3-fight losing streak and ranked at 16 on here. So, yeah, there's a few guys above him he could fight and do. If we're talking fun fights, how about Calvin Kata, who's edging towards the bottom end of the top 10. And if you want to jump him into the rankings real quick, you just put him in with Jeremy Stephens, and either he gets smoked or he does what every good striker does, moves offline out of the way of Stephens and looks amazing in a decision. Jeremy Stephens is like, if you're confident that someone's a competent fighter and smart enough to fight smart, put him in with Jeremy Stephens and they'll instantly be top 10, because he's always top 10 just based on who he can beat. And the problems that he brings, and he's always had the same weakness. Everyone beats him the same way. All it takes is fighting a bit smarter. I mean, that's exactly what happened with Moicano. He was unranked. Jeremy Stephens was number 5 in the world. They put Moicano in with him. Moicano moved sideways and jabbed, and Jeremy Stephens ended up looking like a scrub, basically, in that fight. And then he fought someone who didn't do that and knocked him out. But looking forward to Allen's next fight. Just reminds us, really, I mean, the question here is, how good is Mads Burnell? Cage Warriors champion Mads Burnell, no less. So then you're into the depressing stuff, which is Michael Chiesa versus Diego Sanchez. We talked about Diego Sanchez's wacky interview last week, and, I'm just going to say it again. If you continue to ask for, to be like, oh, Diego's still got fight in him, you suck. You absolutely suck. And some people were like, someone got on me on Facebook about this, being like, don't pretend to care about brain damage if you follow combat sports. And you're like, clearly, there are levels to this. There's a difference between, wanting to see the best fighters in the world fight each other within reason until they've suffered a couple of knockouts each, and being aware that there's probably some lasting damage going on there, and wanting to see Gary Goodridge versus world champions in K1. I always say I would happily let my car roll over whoever booked Gary Goodridge's fights in K1. But there is a difference between taking some damage in the course of a successful fighting career and just going on way too long and being Gary Goodridge. And that's where Diego is, and BJ Penn. They have the record on most head strikes absorbed in the UFC. And that's only in competition. Diego's at something like almost 2,000 now. And if you've absorbed 2,000... This is significant strikes, by the way, not just strikes. If you've absorbed 2,000 significant strikes in your career, in your sparring, I'd be like, may want to be careful, may want to hang it up soon. But that's just in competition. And he's doing these old school camps too. If you don't believe there's been lasting damage, and this is the thing, people are like, you can't diagnose the CTE in Diego Sanchez. The problem is you can't diagnose CTE full stop. The only way you can prove it is to cut their brain apart after they're dead. That's why only 2 fighters have ever been diagnosed with actual CTE. Gary Goodridge's suspected CTE, and we know that he took a lot of damage in his career, but we haven't cut his brain open and found out yet. If you don't believe that there has been lasting damage to Diego Sanchez's brain at this point, and you're just going, well, he's always been weird, you are pretending that punches to the head don't matter. You're in that 1950s NFL thinking of, just walk it off, champ, we got another one coming up. And it was made even worse by the fact that Diego hired this absolute hack to be his cornerman, his sole cornerman. If you watched any of the videos of him, like, flowing on the heavy bag and shit like that, it's just a spiritual nut, you know, dishing out advice like, crack that coconut, when Chiesa was on top of him, presumably asking for an elbow to the head, saying, I need that Tyson. And you thought, oh, they worked on a specific technique they called the Tyson. Nope, just he needed that Tyson. Just that striking was the follow-up line. And then in the before the third round, he goes, I need a 100% now. And that was it. That was his corner advice. And Diego Sanchez has always been dumb and gullible. You know, last time he left Jackson Wink, he got embezzled out of $150,000 by someone who was nice to him. He raised a child that was claimed to be his without a paternity test. He's just not a clever man, but he's also severely brain damaged. And I partly blame Jackson Wink because they had him there and they were like, oh, he's part of the family, blah, blah, blah. And he stuck his neck out and defended them when Donald Cerrone was like, oh, things are going to shit at Jackson Wink. Jackson and Wink should have stepped in individually or together and said, Diego, it's time to hang it up now. And if then he left, fair enough. But they should have done that like 5 years ago. Maybe 10. So Chiesa just manhandled Sanchez and quite, you know, the point of this fight was that he's probably not going to hit Diego Sanchez that much, but he was very forgiving in how much he hit Diego Sanchez. In the first round, he landed some nice elbows from the back, and Diego decided to trade with elbows to the thigh from back mount, but the rest of the fight was just Chiesa grapple fucking him, basically. And he was all over him. Lovely Kimura trap stuff when Diego was going for a leg. Lovely switch at several points, you know, just like BJ did Diego back in the day. And mostly just flowing all over Diego. And then, you know, you watch the footage, watching this fight, having watched the footage of Rockhold, just giving Chiesa any position he wanted and working out of it earlier in the week. You're like, fucking hell, Luke Rockhold's got some good grappling. But this is what everyone says all the time. And it's really frustrating that he just continues to shit the bed in his fights. So anyway, Chiesa gets his win. Doesn't really mean anything in the grand scheme of things. But, you know, some people still care about Diego Sanchez's name value. Then you had Jan Blachowicz versus Luke Rockhold, and Luke Rockhold's in a really weird position. Because he came out, kicked him really hard a couple of times, looked great, moved into the clinch along the fence. Just like I said, I'd love to see how he does in the clinch. And then he basically exhausted himself trying to get Jan Blachowicz down. And then when he was back out of range, he just looked slow and exhausted again. And I know he's had some injuries because his left shin was smashed up, and now he's got... They were letting him wear a shin pad, which was really weird, or at least like a covering on his shin. Never seen anyone do that in MMA, I don't think, or at least in the US. So that was odd. But, you know, someone was saying Luke's been dominated in all his fights on the feet lately. Did you not watch the Romero fight? Because I watched the Romero fight and I was like, fucking hell, Luke Rockhold's looking good. Triple jabs, lead leg kicks, what's going on? And then he comes out for this one, he doesn't have any of that. He just looked big and heavy. It looked like you know, when these move-ups go wrong, you put on a load of weight and then you're slower than the dude you're fighting, and he's a natural light heavyweight and you're like a beefed-up middleweight. And then Blachowicz caught him coming out of he caught him in the first round coming out of the clinch with an elbow, and then knocked him down with a looping high kick that just caught him over the back of the head. That wasn't a good look. You know, Luke got up from the floor for the end of the first round with, like, glassy eyes. And then the second round, Blachowicz hits him with a beautiful sneaker out of the clinch, left hook, right hook, puts Rockhold on his back, hits him like 5 times once he's already dead. Just not a great look for Blachowicz or the referee. Just really sad. Because Rockhold, anything you hear about people who've trained with, or from people who've trained with Luke Rockhold, he sounds like an absolute monster. And then he gets in the ring and shits the bed. And I think part of it is the chin stuff, but then he fought a fight this time that was, you know, trying to stay away from the out in the open striking. He was moving in using the clinch and stuff, but he couldn't get his man down. I just think I'd love to see Luke do something like Kasai, you know, the grappling tournament. There are so many like no-gi grappling tournaments that are offering good prize money now, and certainly for super fights he could make good money. He's already done it. He's been the UFC champion. He was a very good champion. At one point, we were all like, this guy's the best fighter in the world, maybe pound for pound. He was very, very scary. People don't remember it now, but like back when he beat Weidman, people were like, fucking hell, how good is this guy? And then, big openings in his boxing. Chin seems to have been cracked a bit. And it's just sort of sad seeing him in this situation. I mean, I could see him getting much better if he could. The thing is that he keeps changing shit too. Like, was Hooft in his corner this time? I can't remember if he was, but like, the last fight, he looked really good, having trained with Hooft, and then lost, and then it seems like he went, okay, well, all that stuff doesn't work then. Because all the stuff up to the KO was working, and then an old habit got him knocked out, and fighting Yoel Romero, obviously. There are people who are going to be able to fight incredibly, and then never quite be good enough to beat Yoel Romero, and that's everyone except Robert Whittaker at this point. I think he sort of like threw the baby out with the bathwater there. But I mean, good on Blachowicz. Looked solid and just looked like a guy who'd been handling light heavyweights his whole life. And Luke Rockhold looked like a big blown up middleweight. Masvidal versus Askren. I mean, not a lot to say about this one because it was the fastest. Was it the fastest on record in the UFC? 5 seconds. But yeah, I mean, it just ties in what we said last week. Askren's style is completely honest. And you can't afford to be honest in fighting most of the time. Being honest in fighting is like, I'm going to do this. And I'm just going to do it with a hard enough nosed attitude that I'm just going to walk through anything you do. Whether that's I'm going to get inside and bang you with punches or wrestle you. Good fighting involves deception. And Askren employed that as a wrestler. If you watch any of his wrestling instructionals, he's got some clever little setups. But in MMA, he is just, I'm going to shoot for your legs. And he never hooks and then shoots. He never punches and then shoots. His teammate Tyron Woodley is so much more dangerous just because he's comfortable throwing his right hand. He's not a good boxer, he's not particularly slick, but because he's got that right hand that could just knock you flat, he throws it and then the takedowns are there if he needs them. But Askren came out, Masvidal before the fight was like, come for my legs. Askren's like, yeah, I'm going for your legs. And then he goes in and immediately gets kneed in the head. I mean, I don't know what to say. And it's one of those ones that's so, I mean, we've said it so many times on this podcast before, but if you can, like, the more you respect someone, in fights, if nothing happens through the first round, they go, oh, they respect each other a lot. The more you respect someone, the more you should try and smoke them cold, because that gives you one up on the rivalry, and if you're lucky, you never have to fight him again. Like Jose Aldo versus Cub Swanson could have been a very interesting matchup. If anyone who knows anything about their styles goes, yeah, that could have been a very interesting matchup, particularly once they got to the UFC. But because of that one flying knee in the WEC, no one ever took that rematch seriously. And you're like, but we didn't see anything of what actually played out between the two. And then people are like, no, Aldo's just got his number. And you're like, what? How? How does that work? His number is pedalo flying knee in the opening seconds. So yeah, I mean, Askren versus Masvidal, we know nothing about how their wrestling interacts, which was the whole point of the first fight. We're like, can Masvidal stop these takedowns? Because Masvidal stops a good takedown, but Askren's the best at taking people down. We know nothing about that, but as Askren said himself, what's he going to do? Ask for a rematch? So Masvidal gets, this is probably the best little run of his career. So he gets to presumably end up in title contention. Well, I mean, its next fight will either be for the title or against someone who's just about to go for the title. So that'll be exciting. Askren, I mean, the past 2 fights he's been hit really hard. And before he got to the UFC, I was like, this is going to be a problem when you start fighting guys who are good enough with their footwork and stuff, who are going to be able to catch you coming in. And to be honest, flying knee coming in is like the sort of thing I didn't really anticipate, because you don't do that against very good wrestlers, because they'll take you down off it if you hit them and they don't go unconscious. But, Robbie Lawler really showed what good footwork and timing can do against Askren's style. I think he's going to have real trouble, but I think he'll always be able to murk some dudes, but I think he's going to have real trouble if he can't learn to hide his shots at least a little. Nunes versus Holm, thought this was good. Thought it was decent. Amanda Nunes is probably the best fighter I really struggle to get excited for, because I know those divisions are so bad. And after the fight, everyone's posting like a list of her accomplishments, who she's knocked out. It's amazing that she's not considered this, that, or the other. And I go, I agree. But I also immediately forget about her after she's fought. But I thought she handled Holly Holm very well. And in this main and co-main event, you saw that the oblique kick and the low line side kick are just not, they're done. If you're good, they're done. Like, they are a tool to an end. They are part of a rounded game. Part of a full breakfast. It's not, if you aren't just dumb, it's not enough to just keep you out of range now with those kicks. Amanda Nunes and Thiago Santos just pull the leg back a little bit. You saw these kicks were landing on Nunes's leg but doing nothing because you pulled her leg back a bit. There is a very small window where you got to push through. It's like breaking a board with a side kick or something like that. There's a small window where you're actually going to have the power to go through the board. And that's where it is. You know, Amanda Nunes just kept pulling her leg back. I actually went for the low kick on the low kick on the shin side, and I was just looking at that, wincing. But Holm kept picking her leg up to fake the side kick and then not doing anything with it, presumably because she'd had trouble landing it properly. She was picking it up and going, maybe not. And then the end of the fight came when she picked it up, didn't do anything with it, and Nunes just stepped in and kicked her in the head. Really well timed by Nunes. Terrific kick. I mean, shades of that Rousey kick, but not quite the same dominant angle. Yeah. Cool. I mean, Holly Holm I was going to say she should retire and have that family she was talking about, but she's just divorced her husband. All kinds of rumours about her and John Jones going around at the moment, but, you know, let's grow up. They're training partners. They'll probably spend a lot of time with each other regardless. But John Jones versus Thiago Santos. Now, this is one of those fights where everyone was arguing about the scorecards the next day, and I was just feeling bad because I'm never going to rewatch this fight, probably. I mean, unless I do another King of the King, I'm probably not rewatching this fight. And that's why Dana White now is insisting that the fight was never even close, because he knows that there would be a rematch and it would be deserved, but no one would watch it. Only the same people. Whereas John Jones versus Stipe, John Jones for the heavyweight belt, that all makes money. John Jones versus Thiago Santos was a placeholder and is not going to make any money on a rematch either. Santos did good for who he is, because he isn't like a technical kickboxer at all, and he was just clubbing Jones's legs from the outside. Jones was doing his usual thing, trying to oblique kick, wasn't really working, throwing some nice high kicks and body kicks and things. Took the centre of the cage again, didn't lead Thiago around, which is what I expected, because that's what he did against DC and Gustafsson. But I think it was the second round, Thiago Santos goes for a kick, throws his whole body weight into it, doesn't pivot on his standing leg, and explodes his knee. Apparently everything, including the meniscus, tore. So the fact that he was walking around on it and fighting on it, incredible. But really, this performance was just super uninspiring about Jones. About Jones. Well, something I didn't really give full attention in the Killing the King, even though I was thinking it, was that Jones has looked, he's been looking like he's aging, and that's partly his hairline just disappearing, which is, possibly the roids, but just he looks a bit slower. He doesn't look nearly as impressive as he did back in the day. And my thinking was like, when Jones does lose, we're all going to be like, well, he's past it now. And this fight, he just looked dreadful. I thought, he won still, but I didn't do a scorecard, so I'm not going to argue with people about whether he won or not. But he did look bad. He had a man on one leg from, he had 15, 20 minutes with the guy on one leg, couldn't do anything. The extent of Thiago Santos' boxing was throwing a Superman punch and then running in flurrying, and he still caught Jones a couple of times. Jones had no jab to speak of, but that's, just a constant in his career. And he attempted one takedown in the whole fight, and that really was only a little bit more committed than all the other tap leg and try and back elbow or kick or whatever. He didn't ever really commit to trying to take Thiago Santos down. And you're just like, why? Are you trying to prove a point? Because you're not impressing anyone doing it. But then this ties in with something that Phil McKenzie was saying. He was saying, like, Jones's takedowns haven't looked great in forever. And I was watching the Gustafsson fight, and he was shooting with the arms really wide, and Gustafsson was picking the takedown attempts off easy. And then Jones would come up and crank the arm, and I was thinking, maybe he's giving him the underhook so he can crank the arm, because he always cranks the same arm. But now I'm thinking maybe his takedowns just have gone to shit. Who knows? Like, if they booked the rematch, I would expect him to take him down in, like, the second round and immediately pound him out. But just, really uninspiring performance. I mean, Thiago's part was fairly inspiring because he was doing decently on one leg. But, couldn't help but feel like, if Jones did anything smart, he would have won this fight much easier. So what's next for Jones? I don't know, fucking heavyweight. What I want really is to see that DC fight at heavyweight, just because I'd be intrigued to how it would play out, because I thought DC did amazingly in the second fight until he got kicked in the head, which was just overreaching, basically. He was running Jones ragged, but can DC keep that pressure with more weight? Because he famously fights at like 240, 250 now, put on a big belly to do it. And can Jones carry the maneuverability and pace, consistent pace over 5 rounds? up to heavyweight if he has to put on the heavyweight to handle a 250 DC in the clinch. That to me is fascinating, but, you know, he's already 2-0 over him. Doesn't really need to prove anything there if he doesn't want to, I suppose. But yeah, I mean, peculiar night of fights, lots of great knockouts, but that main event just, just left me on a real meh. And then people were asking me about my scorecard, and I was like, I was kind of drifting off. I'm sorry. It just wasn't a great fight. And I'm certainly not at all angry about anything of that fight, you know. Let's do a quick question. Hi, Jack. I hope Rockhold realises now that if he doesn't retire, he needs to drastically change his fighting style. His defense and chin are major liabilities at punching range, so what new style might give him success? Tell me why Luke couldn't employ something similar to Ryan Hall's strategy, basically kicking at range with a constant eye towards getting heel hooks, lots of spinning kicks into rolling entries. Rockhold's kicking is already leagues ahead of Hall's. If Luke took a year off strictly to learn heel hooks and leg entries in the MMA context, I think he would be seriously dangerous in that realm. Luke's BJJ is among the absolute best in MMA, and BJJ greats like Buchecha and Gordon Ryan have given him incredibly high praise. Gordon even claims that Luke would submit most dominant ADCC champs. It seems reasonable to me that he could become elite at leg locks in a very short time. Though Rockhold has murderously good top grappling, his takedown ability isn't good enough to get him there reliably. Leg entries get around that, and even if he gets stuck on the bottom sometimes in the process, I like his chances working from there, versus the sword of Damocles that constantly hangs over Luke's head during punching exchanges, where every counterpunch seems like it could end his night. I doubt his ego would let him go this route, but I think that it could work. What do you say? Cheers from Holden. Well, I think part of Luke's BJJ success in MMA was that he came forward pounding your body with those body kicks, and when you tried to take him down, he'd go into that top triangle and things like that. I mean, if you watch the Chiesa clip, he top triangles him like 3 times with that judo triangle from like the top of the sprawl. But, you know, that was his thing. He punished guys for trying to take him down. He had a wicked guillotine that he used to sweep and then finish from there. If you watch the Weidman fight, he holds a guillotine from side control and like just keeps trying to get his guard back with this guillotine without letting Weidman do anything from the top. It's quite impressive. But read the rolling leg entries. I think it's a very labour-intensive game. It's like going all the way knee to the mat to shoot, you know. Takedowns in MMA work best if you don't have to do a huge level change like Frankie Edgar. You know, you just pick up the lead leg and run through it. It's very hard to be like economical with your energy if you're doing full-on shots. And certainly I think that's true of like Imanari rolls and things like that. You know, even if you watch Ryan, he doesn't do them all the time. He'll do like 2 or 3 around tops. And a lot of them, like against Gray Maynard, it was just when he got into a position where he was like along the fence and he went, oh, okay, well, he's probably going to run in and try and hit me in the head now. So rather than try and sprint off this fence, I'll just roll in on his legs. And I think, you know, the reputation of Ryan does a lot for him there too. Actually, he's fighting on the card this week. That's exciting. However, I don't know with Luke. Like I said earlier, I can't help but feel he's sort of throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I think he's still a very scary man when he's going forward and body kicking, which is what he immediately did against Yan and backed him onto the fence. And then he chose to try and waste all this energy trying to take him down when he could have just kept beating him up along the fence. I think Luke's weakness is when he's on the back foot. And the other thing is that like he was very tall and long at middleweight, and that check hook really, you know, it was very hard to reach him. If you watch the Bisping fight, the first one, Bisping's running for him and has to like sprint across the cage and still can't catch him because Luke's just so long. He's so far back in that long stance and he flicks up the check hook. You know, the reason that he got caught against Yol was because he got put on the fence. And the reason that he got caught against Branch was because Branch hit him like with a double in a row and caught him way back in his stance when he'd already made tons of distance. I feel like the Rockhold check hook is still very dangerous. I think he just needs a better boxing coach to show him how to stay safe down behind his shoulder, how to duck a punch from that leaning back position, things like that. It's just, the thing is that he's in this position where if the check hook hits and he hasn't like knocked them off path, or if they get all the way to him, he's just leaning straight back. And if you hit him, he's immediately going to hit the mat, regardless of whether it knocks him out or not. You know, when you're leaning that far back over your rear leg, it's very hard to take a good shot. And the Blachowicz ones, he got caught twice coming out of the clinch, and that's a little bit different. That, you know, the sneakers are an amazing way to catch people. It wasn't like he was getting tooled up out of range. I think range striking is still something that very much favours him, whether he's at light heavyweight or middleweight. But he needs to just rely on those heavy kicks more. But he definitely needs a smarter way of getting into the ground than using that fence stuff when he's up a bigger weight class, and clearly guys like Jan Blachowicz can stop his takedowns. Stop his clinch work, rather, along the fence. What I will say is, you know who drew the shit hand on this card? You know, Michael Chiesa goes up to New Division, gets established name who hasn't been dangerous in years. Luke Rockhold goes up to New Division, gets guy who just missed out on getting a title shot. Very rough stuff for Luke. I do feel for him. I mean, people, the MMA fandom love taking the piss out of him, but he was a very scary man, and now people just aren't taking him seriously. It's very strange. Anyway, I reckon that'll do us for today. We'll be back on Thursday. I'll be putting out something else for the Patreon boys this week. I've already put the Cyril Gahn piece up yesterday. That's just how I'm going to work. Unless there's something really interesting going on that I need to share with everyone, I'll just be writing stuff for the Patreon boys throughout the week. If you want to get in on that, sign up to the Patreon. If you want to send an email to the podcast, fightsgonebypodcast@gmail.com. And if you want to see what I'm writing at any time, fightprimer.com. I'm your boy, Jack Slack. Oh my god, by the way, did you see Rumble Johnson versus Craig Jones? Rumble is like 300 pounds now and a little bit chubby, and he still moves like a cat. It's hilarious. The chonkest I've ever seen Rumble. He looked fantastic. I just want him versus Ngannou at that chubby weight. Anyway, cheers!